Welcome, everyone. I'm Joe Andrews from SupportLogic, and I welcome you all to Lessons Learned, Perspectives from a Decade in Customer Success. We're in day 2 of SX Live. The customer success and support collaboration have been our theme today, and this is a fantastic topic. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. It's been over a decade, 12, 13 years since the companies that my panelists have been involved in were launched. I believe Gainsight was 2009-ish, Totango 2010, Strikedeck 2015. And during that time, the last decade, customer success has become a defined category. And we're bringing together, right, these 3 early pioneers and thought leaders in the industry. So it's my honor and gives me pleasure to introduce Dan, Omer, and Shreesha. So Dan Steinman is Chief Evangelist at Gainsight and a globally recognized thought leader in the world of customer success. Dan's an author of the seminal book on the topic called Customer Success: How Innovative Companies Are Reducing Churn and Growing Recurring Revenue. And now Dan spends a lot of time doing public speaking on customer success and serves on boards and is an advisor to several tech companies. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Joe. That's a kind intro. It sounds almost like I wrote it myself.
Perhaps you did, Dan. Welcome. It's great to have you. And next, I'll introduce Omer Gottlieb is a co-founder and CEO of SalesSpeak and a seasoned entrepreneur, advisor, and investor with a wealth of experience in the tech industry. As a co-founder of Totango, a leading customer success platform, Omer played a pivotal role during its growth and success. And Omer led various functions across the board, from sales, customer success, support, business development, and sales engineering. And Omer's leadership and strategic insights have contributed to the success of both Totango and the companies that he now advises. Welcome, Omer.
Thanks, Joe. Pretty excited to join Dan and Shreesha today.
It's great to have you here. And then finally, and certainly not least, Shreesha Ramdas, also an entrepreneurial executive. Shreesha has a track record of launching and growing products in many competitive markets. He's currently incubating a startup, and maybe he can share a little bit of insight around that. But Shreesha was previously SVP and GM at Medallia and CEO of Strikedeck, leader in customer success automation. Medallia acquired Strikedeck. And prior to that, Shreesha was the VP of corporate development and partnerships at Calidus Cloud. And you have also a history prior to that in marketing automation, which is near and dear to my heart, and before Calidus. So welcome, Shreesha.
Thanks, Joe. Really a pleasure to join customer success stalwarts here.
Yeah, it's great to have everyone here. There are so many topics that we can cover looking back on a decade of customer success, and we have plans to address what we think would be really interesting to share with our audience. Meanwhile, I'd encourage our audience to add questions or comments in the Q&A tab, and we'll get to them towards the end, but we want to make sure we're covering topics that are top of mind. So I'm going to start out with a question for everyone. I did a little research. It looks like the first reference to the phrase customer success was started by CRM vendor Vantiv, approximately 1997-ish. That's 25 years ago, 26 years ago. But we all know that the function in the movement and the category really grew with the advent of SaaS. So I'd be curious to get your take. I'll start with Dan on what do you think the real catalyst is for the CS movement? And from your perspective, what really made it take off?
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty straightforward answer. I remember the Vantiv story with the term customer success popping up there. But I actually think that was just a phrase that was used because I did a lot of jobs before SaaS that today would be called customer success. We were just randomly picking names, customer advocacy and customer relationship management and et cetera. But I think the clear catalyst for customer success was the advent of the subscription pricing model. SaaS and subscription kind of go together, but the reality is it was the pricing model that created the need. And I think what I refer to as the first real customer success team was at Salesforce, because they were the first company at any scale at all to put customers on a subscription. And what a surprise, they found out they had a churn problem. And the way they addressed it was by creating a team that Mark Benioff deemed customer success with the goal of retention and adoption. Not a lot has changed, frankly. Now the discipline has evolved in a tremendous way, the technology that supports it. There's lots of changes, but the catalyst for all of it has been this idea that we no longer collect all the money up front when we sell our software. We have to earn it over time through some kind of a subscription, which creates renewals. And then, of course, on top of that, every company has built their company and their products as a land and expand model. So now customer success becomes just as important with regard to, will the customer buy more from us, not just renew, but buy more from us. So I think the subscription model and then following that, the land and expand is really the catalyst that has driven the need and the growth of customer success.
Gotcha, Dan. Shreesha.
If I may add to that, completely agree with Dan, and definitely, the churn events are the one that, are the catalyst for that. But the other thing is data. I think the fact that companies have data that can actually they use also led to, again, taking customer success and shaping it into what it is today.
Yeah, I completely agree with both Dan and Omer on how it took shape. I'll give a different take to that, Joe. So if you think about a few years ago, the term that a lot of companies used was customer delight. So this delight was a word where you said you don't just satisfy your customers, you get them delighted, you get them super ecstatic with your product, right? So that was where I felt, that whole customer intimacy first started. And then it later transitioned to this difference between reactive and proactive, right? So then the question was, how do you become more proactive? And that's where all the 2-word phrases that starts with customer as a first word. If you take customer support, customer education, customer adoption, customer training, the most proactive, action-oriented word is success, right? Because success is getting somebody to succeed with it. And so that's where I feel like customer success went mainstream and there was whole momentum behind it.
Yeah, that's a great take, Shreesha. Omer, how did you become personally interested in this opportunity in space?
Okay. I'd be happy to tell you that I knew from the beginning that it's going to be called customer success and that's going to be the field, but in reality, it wasn't. I think I come from a background of building at telco companies. And if you think about it, churn and data is something that was there like 30, 40 years ago. It wasn't never called customer success. So that with the intersection of SaaS and the ability that, you can actually use data to know what's going on. I simply remember when you started the company, we went and interviewed probably hundreds of CEOs. And the main thing I remember from there was everybody told us, we're flying blind. We're flying blind. We have a lot of customers, but we don't know what's going on. So the beginning of the focus was, let's make sure they can see. And if you remember, Dan probably remember then, the main thing was about visibility and about adoption. And later on, just expanding into that. Another anecdote I can tell you, one of the things we monitored at Totango, when we tried to raise money, we had to present to the VCs, some indication about the market size. And one of the leading indicators was the number of jobs in LinkedIn with the title customer success. And back in 2010, maybe a few hundreds, that's it. But you can see the tremendous growth. And I think, when Shreesha started Strikedeck in 2015, it was probably, tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands or more. I didn't even check to see, what's the size right now. So I think, what's really exciting in this market is that it is still evolving. It's much more mature than it was 10 years ago and 5 years ago. But if you compare it to, sales and marketing, it still have ways to go.
Yeah, and that's a great indicator and a signal that the category has arrived, is that people are forming their titles out of it. That's fantastic. Shreesha, what's your story personally? How did you become interested in the space?
Yeah, so I got into the space because of two reasons. One was in my board conversations. Everywhere it was all about how many new logos did you acquire this quarter, and most of the boardroom meetings were spent talking about that, right? About the sales process, about the demand gen process. And I felt like, why are people ignoring something that's in their backyard, that's a gold mine in their backyard? And how can we bring in this customer centricity, customer conversations at the boardroom level? So that was one impetus. The second was, my previous company was in marketing automation space, and so it was about taking customers from lead to closure journey. And so I thought it was a natural evolution from the closed customers now to successful customers journey, and all the lessons that I'd learned from pushing, nurturing the customers to become actually a customer, use the same tactics to get them to now become successful.
Yeah, my own perspective is there's been such a fantastic evolution in the customer journey, right? We had these sort of siloed gates, pre-sale, post-sale, and now with subscriptions and all these other newer monetization models like product-led growth and usage-based pricing. There's so much about making customers successful even before you're monetizing them, that it's fantastic, right? We just, even in marketing, my field of expertise, you just strip out these silos and look at the journey and what's important for your customers. So I love that. Shifting gears, and I'll ask Dan the next question. So there's clearly a trend of convergence between customer success and support. We cover that here at this conference. A few weeks ago at Pulse, there was a stat shared that 49% of Fortune 1000 companies have a chief customer officer today who manages both the support and success functions, as well as others like professional services, and that it's growing. So what's your perspective, Dan, on the opportunities and the challenges that still remain for better alignment between support and success?
Yeah, I think I would use the word converging carefully, because it's not like support reps and customer success people are coming together to jointly do one job. That's not what's happening. Those are two very different jobs. But what is happening for a few reasons. One is CEOs want fewer people reporting to them, so they create C-level titles so that fewer people have to report to them. Because at one point, when I joined Marketo, when I did my second VP of customer success job, there was a head of support, a VP of support who reported to the CEO, a VP of services who reported to the CEO, a VP of onboarding who reported to the CEO. And at some point, the CEO is like, I don't need all 7 people who do post-sales stuff reporting to me. I'm going to create a chief customer officer title, and all of them are going to report to him. And as my CEO at Gainsight used to like to say, I want one throat to choke when something's going wrong during the customer journey. Much like you'll remember this, Joe, back in the day when I was at Marketo, we created, in a way, the CRO title and put both marketing and sales under that title, under the assumption that it's just one big funnel from the beginning of marketing to the end of sales. Some of that is to alleviate the number of people, that the CEO has to manage. So I think that's part of it, but it also makes a ton of sense, because if I'm CCO, and I have been at Gainsight, I can see the entire customer journey from the first kickoff meeting to do onboarding all the way to the renewal and upsell process. And I feel responsibility in that role for the smoothness of that process, for the good quality of each handoff, for the right people interacting with the customer at the right time without creating frustration with the customer, et cetera. So I think there is convergence in that most of those, in many companies, those post-sales people all are rolling up to one person before they get up to the CEO. And I think that's a good thing, because I do believe that the customer journey ought to be looked out for by one person who's ultimately responsible for that.
Mm-hmm. So point taken, beware of the word convergence, but it really is about alignment. And do you think that this, right, convergence from an org perspective is helping to drive alignment? Or is it really the other things, the important work being done by the teams that help enable better alignment?
It definitely helps to have everybody under one person. So the entire current customer journey is owned by one person. You're definitely going to get better alignment by doing that. The other thing that obviously will drive alignment is, are we delivering the value that we promised to our customers during the sales cycle? Like, I still believe that most churn can be tied back to a poor onboarding experience. That's why I want the same person being accountable for the churn number who has responsibility for onboarding and then support and success, et cetera. So I think alignment is driven by the customer need. And by the way, customers don't want multiple people touching them. They would rather just have one person. But the reality is these are different jobs with different skill sets. So I always say to customers who say, how come I can't just have one person to work with? My answer is, are you sure that you want our salesperson to be the only person you ever talk to? I bet your support tickets aren't going to get resolved very well by your salesperson, right? So that's not really what they want. What they want is alignment. They want the left hand and the right hand. They want good handoffs. They want a consistent experience, high response rate, whatever those things are. But what they're saying is, take good care of me, but don't let me drop through the cracks if I need to deal with multiple people. And I think that is enhanced by not only what the customer needs, but by what a CCO should be doing, is watching out for that.
Makes total sense, Dan. Shreesha or Omer, anything to add to that on the alignment front?
First of all, I completely agree with the conversion issue, because I do think these are two separate professions. Although again, our first CSM in Totango was probably also the first support person, because at the beginning everybody did everything.
True at every company, by the way.
But I think the alignment is key, and one of the keys for alignment is really sharing the data and the knowledge. One is, I want everybody to know everything we know about the customer. You don't have to use it, but you do know, if you are solving support tickets, you need to know that this is a high-value customer that are about to renew, and they had challenges in onboarding. And you need to figure out how you solve your support cases or escalate them that accordingly. The second thing is that everybody in those teams needs to be aligned on the goals. Our goal as a support organization, for example, isn't to solve support tickets. This is just what we do. But the goal is to make sure that the customer reach their goals. And the best people know to raise their hand and know to call in the customer success team. And sometimes they actually need to work together. So I would put a lot of emphasis on the alignment. And as Dan said, it could be solved by a chief customer officer, overseeing all those kind of things. I did see some CEOs are doing it. Again, it really depends on the personalities. I know some successful companies that, their support organization is actually reporting to the engineering organization, which in my point of view can work also if the engineering organization is aligned with the customer goal. So it's not about the specific organization structure, it's about these organizations sharing the same goals and sharing the same data sets about the customers. Those are the challenges, I think, that it needs to be solved.
And those are big assumptions and big challenges as well.
Yeah.
So Joe, I'll add one aspect to that. So I think the confusion has come about because of pressure on support agents to be more action oriented, which is be proactive. And because the proactive word is associated with customer success, that's where questions come about, like where do you draw the line? And that's where I would say, like, modern tools like SupportLogic, they go a long way in getting agents to be more proactive, more action oriented. And in order to get the alignment done, there's a need for the support system and for customer success platforms to basically talk to each other to create that alignment, customer alignment.
Makes total sense. Thanks, Shreesha. We're going to talk a little bit about automation and AI. So we're in this increasing age of technology acceleration, and yesterday was all spent on this, right? AI, which has been enabling companies in technology for many years, but it's really been the generative part in the last 6 or so months that have really taken the world by storm. We showed a stat that generative AI is the technology that got to 100 million users adoption in less than 100 days, which is just insane in terms of the hyperbolic growth of that technology. So coming back to customer success, how do you strike the right balance between technology-driven customer interactions and maintaining the human touch within customer success? I'll lead with you, Omer.
Okay. I want to be controversial and say, how do we sure we want to have a human touch? And I know it's controversial, but in reality, I've spent a lot of time in the last 6 months diving into AI, and I'm pretty amazed of what it can do now, and more important, what it will be able to do in the next 6 or 12 or 18 months. But I think the right answer is that there isn't one customer success. Like customer success for large enterprise is different than SMBs. Customer success for executives is different than developers. For example, I have yet to see a developer that is very, very happy and eager to speak with a person. On the other hand, executives, let's talk. So I think in reality, I would automate and put AI in everything that you can, and everything that makes sense. For example, if you're onboarding an account, yes, automate as much as you can. But remember, there's an executive there that you have to have a human reach out and feel the pulse as well. So I think it's the combination of really understanding who are you selling to and servicing to, what's the ideal customer journey for them, and let each one of these users actually pick their own. For example, I'm learning by watching videos. I would never read the long email. And maybe Dan is different, and Joe, you're different. And we could be the same, do the same specific role. So I would always aim for try to provide as much self-service as you can in a smart way. And right now, AI can do that in a smart way, or will be able to do that pretty soon. But also, you as an executive in customer success, you really need to understand when is it time to actually engage, because human needs human as well. So I don't have like a one answer. It really depends, but I would lean into automating, including AI as much as you can, but allowing your users to also choose the human touch when they want.
Yep. Anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, I will. I actually don't think this is about AI. It's just about technology. Because here's the reality. If I'm running a customer success organization, I have cost responsibilities. There's only so much money I can spend. Now, if I have 100 customers and you give me 200 CSMs, I can pretty much guarantee you none of those customers are ever going to churn. But you'd be out of business in about 6 weeks because you can't spend that much money, right? So technology is a way of reducing costs. That's all it is, right? If we all agree that the most effective touch with a customer is a human being one-on-one, the right human being one-on-one, then anything we do less than that reduces the cost, also reduces the effectiveness. So I would claim, no matter how good AI is or whatever the next technology is, you could never do as well with AI as you could with the right person one-on-one with the customer. However, we run businesses with the goal of being profitable, which means we have to reduce costs. And the mantra in customer success is, why do we segment our customers and do more digital with some of them? Because we can't afford to treat them all the same, right? So it starts at the low end. Usually we try to do email and webinars, and that's where AI will play a lot. But it trickles up as well, because anything we do digitally that works for a SMB customer is probably going to be effective to a certain degree for an enterprise customer as well. So I look at the landscape and just say, any technology that can take some burden off of my CSMs and maintain some
Yeah.
good level of retention with the customer is really powerful. So I think the best companies are using all of those, even though they're old school technologies, webinars and email and community is really powerful. And now we're trying to build guidance into our product, because your product is your best CSM for sure. And AI is going to play a role in every one of those circumstances, because AI isn't a thing like email. It's something that is an umbrella over all of those and can make every single one
Pervasive.
more effective.
Yeah. Let me have a follow-up on that, Dan, and I'll direct it to Shreesha. Is, on the support side, and this is what SupportLogic has been spending time doing, is building AI that not only automates the repetitive tasks that can take out cost and improve the efficiency, as Dan said, but it's also about delivering precision in an answer and getting to a customer resolution and an outcome. So that's that last mile of the quality. And that's what, and Francois made a point in the chat here. I think that there's that last part, which is about aligning to the customer outcome. And that's really the question right now, is the balance, because we're still fine tuning that AI. So Shreesha, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the best way to think about this is through an analogy. And if you think about our experience of taking a flight, years ago, remember when we used to go to airport and stand in a line to get our tickets? Now we have that on our mobile phone, and we have bags to check in. We go to a kiosk, print out the tags, and put the tag in the bag or the bags. Now imagine if that kiosk is not working, and you go to another kiosk, even that is not working. And now you actually will be relieved, happy to see an agent who walks to you and says, I'll solve the problem. And then you'll even be more happy if the person says, by the way, here's a voucher for you to buy a drink at Starbucks because of the kiosk not working. And so that's where, we have to embrace technology, because that's the way to increase efficiency. But at times you need human in the loop to solve issues.
Yeah, I think what will be really interesting is to see, and some of our keynote sessions yesterday talked about this, is the human element of AI, because AI is not human, it's machine language, but we try to mold it into be a human experience. And there's some work to be done there, but I think ultimately, right, that can be the benevolent goal and sort of solve that last mile. Shifting gears a little bit, so there's an interesting debate out there in customer success with Nick Mehta challenging Frank Slootman from Snowflake, who's come out very vocally with a viewpoint that the role of customer success as a standalone function is actually not needed. Customer success, hey, great, we built the category for a decade, but it really should be embedded throughout the org. We don't need a separate customer success function. So I'll start with Shreesha again, but without forcing you to pick a side, what's your take? What would you say to naysayers who think that CSMs should just be part of sales?
No, absolutely, Joe. So by the way, I have a high respect for both the gentlemen. Frank Slootman was on our board at Medallia at one point in time, and I love taking walks with Nick. So I'll say this, everybody is in customer success is a great philosophy, and that's how great companies are built. And best of luck to all the CEOs who can implement it, because it's incredibly difficult to have everybody think about customers with the same passion, all the different functional area. And that's the reason why you need a customer success team to basically evangelize the need to focus on customers and get everybody on the line to deliver what they have committed to the customer. And the other point I want to make here is that your customers are not in the business of using your product. Your customers have their own business to run. And it takes time to form habits. And so, which is the group that's responsible for creating an environment that habits form. That ownership, if you can make everybody in the organization take responsibility for that, then you're golden, right? But it's incredibly difficult, and that's where you need a team that's focused on making that habits, or enforcing that habits, or enabling customers to develop those habits. And I'll rest my case there.
I love that soundbite, Shreesha. Your customers are not in the business of using your products. They're running their own business, and how do we enable them? Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think.
Oh, go ahead, Omer. I'll follow up.
Okay. I'm not sure that's a really important question, because take a look at sales, for example. You have SDRs and BDRs and inbound account executive and outbound account executive and enterprise account executive. Now, if somebody says that one person can do all those things, that's fine. I don't believe one person can do that. So I completely agree that we do need people that specialize in making sure customers see value. Now, can they report to the sales organization? I actually saw some companies that are very successful like this, and some companies that are very successful the other way around. So for me, it's really about bringing in the right people, but also bringing in the right executives that make sure that these teams, whether they report to that person or another person, are all aligned with the customer goal. So I don't think, there's no need for customer success. I do think that, like onboarding, right? I wouldn't expect somebody in sales to do onboarding. But whether the onboarding reports to the sales or not, that's something that I don't have a strong opinion on.
Thanks, Omer.
Dan?
Dan?
Yeah, I obviously have an opinion on this, because I have an opinion on everything, whether it's right or not. I would love to sit with Frank Slootman and have this conversation. And the first thing I'd say to him is, Frank, I think theoretically what you're saying makes sense. Like you guys have said, customer success is everyone's responsibility. So is sales, by the way. I bet you hired salespeople. But then what I'd say to him is, I know for sure that you're doing customer success, whether you have people with CSM as a title or not. Because I know what happens when a customer calls Frank Slootman and says, I think we're going to churn. We're not getting what we want out of this. What happens? There's this mad scramble of people to try to go and save that customer. What are they doing? They're doing customer success. They're just doing it in an undisciplined, chaotic way. And that's what the advent of the organization of customer success changes. It creates discipline and rigor around how to do it, so customers get a consistent experience. And hopefully that mad scramble 2 weeks before the churn was supposed to happen no longer happens. So I just don't buy the argument at all. You have to do customer success, and the best way to do it is to organize it and do it with people whose only job is doing customer success.
I concur. We say here at SupportLogic, we're all in the customer success business. We wouldn't scrap having our dedicated function, right? Yeah. It works, and that's leading the way. Hot take: should CSMs have a quota? Should they own a revenue number? Everyone's smiling. Start with Omer.
Okay. I do have a strong opinion here, although I'll start and say that I've seen companies successful with CSM owning quota and companies successful with CSM that are not. So I don't think there's like one answer and that's it. In my world, remember we spoke about alignment, and you need to align the customer success organization with the goals, and the company goals are retention and expansion. So I do think CSMs should own or participate with the quota goal together with the sales. Now, does that mean that I expect the CSM team to sell? I'm not sure, and we need to get into a deeper discussion. What does it mean to sell? But I think if the customer success organization or CSM is doing a good job and identifying gaps within the customer needs and what our product or products can do, and mitigate that gaps, whether this person actually closed the financial details or not, it doesn't really matter. That's their job. Their job is to make sure that they solve the customer need with the tools that we have. And the tools that we have is not being pretty and speaking with the customer. The tools that we have is showing them that we have products that can solve their needs and actually elevate them. So for me, the best alignment for the customer success team is participating in the quota And again, whether you bring in a salesperson to help close the deal or the CSM can do those things by themselves, I think it really depends on the person that is running the organization and the people that they're bringing. I've seen CSM that are doing an amazing job in both of them, and everybody feels great. They, the organization, and the customer. And I've seen CSM that simply says, I can do that. That's fine. And I don't think there's right or wrong. I think you need to build the right organization according to how you are performing as an executive, but do align them with quotas, specifically on retention and expansion. And then you probably need to do some kind of a double quota for the sales team and the CS team. But again, it pays off.
Any other takes?
I'll go next. So I think it largely depends on who's leading the customer success organization and what's the leadership style. So if if the group is being led by a chief revenue officer, generally I've seen they all believe in customer success managers carrying quota, and more organizations are now putting the customer success organizations as CRO's responsibility. So I'm seeing that trend happen.
This is the oldest question in the world of customer success. It really is, because the thing that the subscription model really changed was this question: who is responsible for the commercial aspect of existing customers? And my simple answer is this: salespeople should do sales things, and customer success people should do customer success things. If you ask customer success people to do sales things, they will try to do it, but two bad things will happen. Number one, they won't do it very well. Number two, they won't like it, so they're more likely to leave. I've talked to thousands of customer success managers in my career. A decent majority of them are in customer success because they love working with customers, and they specifically chose CSM because they did not want to be a salesperson. So if you put an individual quota on that person, they're going to go find a different job or a CSM job at a different company. And I think
that a lot.
You can maximize your revenue. And I do think that chief customer officer ought to own the NRR number. And I think there's an account management team that actually does the contracts and the red lines and the negotiation and all that kind of stuff. The CSM supports everything they do, just like an SE supports an AE. But I think you have to really be conscious about the way you're organizing to do this particular task, because you can make it work, as Omer said. In any model, you can make it work. But I think there is a better way for most CSMs, and that is what I've always said to my CSMs. I will never ask you to be a salesperson, but every single day of your life, I'm going to ask you to be sales savvy, because if we don't sell more stuff to our existing customers, then we fail as an organization. So you have to at least think about lead gen and demand gen as a CSM responsibility, if not the final deal and negotiation and redlining and contract signatures. I say bring in an account manager to do that. Otherwise, the CSM gets tainted with the commercial thing, and they're no longer really looked at in the same way by the customer.
Well put. I'm going to shift gears to another question. I'll lead with Shreesha. What advice would you give to CSMs today in terms of the skills that they should build and focus on to advance their careers?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Joe, and I have strong opinion on this one. I have interacted with a lot of CS leaders, and everyone moans about one thing, which is they say that a lot of their CSMs are junior, and it takes years of experience to understand how to go about in crafting strong relationships with customers. And so where the CS leaders worry about is, when everything is going good, the CSMs are all energy and into it. When things go wrong, they are not good in handling those moments, those tough moments. They're not able to have an honest conversation with the customer. They're not good in showing the mirror to the customer about about what they have done wrong, right? This mindset to please the customer is so ingrained that tough conversations are just not happening, right? So that's my advice to CSMs is how do you try to talk to industry leaders, try to talk to more experienced folks, and understand how to build a strong customer relationship at the foundational level of having those honest conversations regularly and establishing that rapport with the customers.
Mm-hmm. Good advice.
I'll go next, Dan, if I may. First of all, I think CSM is one of the hardest jobs that is out there. Because, again, there's many methodologies, and you heard different opinions here. And we do require the CSMs to do a lot of things, right? They need to know a lot about the product and about the technology and processes and sales savvy and, deal with fires and things like that. We know it's not easy. I think, a couple of advices for CSMs that, wants to achieve or advance in their career. One is, how soon can you go and actually have a very meaningful discussions with the top executives at your customers? Not the specific users of your product, which I know you'll do a good job. How do you elevate the discussion without bringing your chief customer officer to the discussion? Like, if you're able to speak with the VPs at that company or the CEO, really depends on who the customers are, then you're doing an amazing job, and it puts you in a very good career trajectory to be an executive one day. So one thing is the ability to have executive level discussion, because we know everybody starts with the low level technical product functionality, but go to that executive level. The second thing is internal to your company. How you're actually able to help your chief customer officer and identify trends within your customer base, within your portfolio, that will help your company actually improve. Whether that's a feature you think that everybody should benefit from, or processes that you think that should be fixed, or identifying the wrong customers we're bringing in. I'm sure there's plenty of opportunities, but think of what you can do in order to improve your company, I would say, operation. Those are the two things I would recommend every CSM to look at.
Thanks, Omer. Dan?
Yeah, I'm going to double down a little bit on one of the things that Omer said. First of all, I think there's two different categories of skills. One is personality traits, and the primary personality trait I've seen in great CSMs is curiosity. Frankly, I think that's true on almost every job in the world. If you're naturally curious, you're going to be better at that job. On the teachable skill set side, I come down pretty heavy on the number one thing for me is domain expertise. By the way, what Omer just said is absolutely true. And it's domain expertise that would allow you to have a conversation with an executive on day one of your job, right? You don't have to become a product expert in order to have a good conversation with your customer if you know their domain. And by the way, if you know their domain, you're going to learn your product really fast. It's going to be a no-brainer. You're going to give a lot of good product feedback. Think about it this way. If you're the customer and you just bought an accounting solution, would you rather have a really experienced CSM who knows nothing about accounting talking to you? Or would you rather have an ex-accountant who hasn't ever been a CSM before? I think the answer is I want that ex-accountant because he knows what I'm living through and all the challenges that I have, and he's going to figure out the product in a heartbeat, right? If he's actually done the job before. So there's a whole bunch of other things on the list of skills that I like, but that's the one I look for at the top of that list is domain expertise.
I like that. Great insight there from the three of you. We have. I'm going to ask one sort of wrap-up question, and then we'll take a few questions from the audience. So if you're out there, please submit questions in the Q&A tab. So let's leave with this. We'll go back to Omer to start. And what are you most proud of? You all have done so much in this space in the last decade, but what are you most proud of in terms of your legacy and customer success?
Well, I think we're all part of a revolution, right? It's us, it's Gainsight, it's Strikedeck. And the two things that I'm proud of is one, the focus is shifting into providing value. it's not just about selling and pushing things to the customer. It is actually providing value to the customer. And the second thing is really, we were a part of creating an industry and creating hundreds of thousands of jobs that completely make sense and really allowed people to start in the high-tech world where before that they didn't have any place for that. So I think it's the combination of value plus creating so many jobs for so many people out there makes me so proud.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I'll go next, Joe. So absolutely championing the whole movement with my fellow leaders was just amazing. Being in the front seat as this whole industry, as the industry took off was again, very fulfilling. I would also say we were able to establish that this discipline needed a system of record. Just like marketers needed marketing automation as a system of record that records day-to-day activity, similarly, in order for customer success to stay disciplined, for that rigor to be established with the customer relationship, it needed a system of record. And that's something really proud of.
Great. Dan?
Yeah, I think I'd simply say that I'll speak for all of us and a bunch of other thought leaders in the customer success space. I think we accelerated, maybe in a very small way, we accelerated all the things that would have otherwise happened anyway. Because customer success wasn't some invention that came out of the blue and just blew everyone's mind. It was like a logical extension of the way we started to do business when we said, let's put customers on subscription. So everyone in the industry was going to figure out all the things that have now been figured out. I think we just maybe helped accelerate that a little bit, whether a little bit is 2 days or 6 months or 9 years, I don't know. But I think the consolidation of the thoughts and the thought leadership around customer success, forced by competition of vendors competing to be the best technology in that space, accelerated the excellence of customer success in general. And I'm really proud to be part of that, although I can't count any specific moment that belonged to me, but I think I was part of it.
You all have a lot to be proud of. So I love ending with that. We do have a couple audience questions. So someone asked, what are some of the challenges that remain in customer success? So where do you all, I'll ask someone to volunteer to take the lead, but where do you all see, needing to move forward and address to make the space more successful?
Yeah, I'll go first. So we all came to this industry to solve the data challenges, but I'm pretty sure that none of us can say all the data challenges have been solved. And one of the key questions is who owns the operations in customer success? That is yet to be resolved, as I see it. Does the sales ops also own customer success operations? Does customer success get its own operations group? Do all the three operations, sales, marketing, customer success, get consolidated in single operational group? I think people are still experimenting with different models. So unless you have a true data repository that has everything going on with customers, you cannot achieve the highest order of efficiency in customer success.
Yeah, I think there's a long list of challenges. Just to follow up on what Shreesha was saying. And I think the primary one among them is the ongoing challenge of how do you create more efficiency in the way we do customer success? By the way, this is frankly the challenge with every single organization in a company. Like I did a presentation recently, and I stole a slide from Nick at Pulse. The slide says, do more with less. Said every CEO to every organization at every single company in all of history, right? That's all they want is to do more with less. And I think that's the ultimate challenge for customer success. How can we weave human and digital together at a cost that is effective for our company and that delivers the highest level of success for our customers? And there's so much more to explore, because I haven't seen a lot of great digital customer success programs pulled together that are behaviorally based and personalized and utilizing AI and community and I mean the perfect storm hasn't quite come together yet. Although companies with really long tails are figuring it out, like Slack and Box and others, but I don't think anyone's really not even halfway to nirvana in that particular area.
That's a good thought.
I'll add to what Dan said, and although it results with do more with less, of course, I agree with that. I think the other side of it is customer expectation have changed completely. Yeah. They have changed in the personal world. For example, I'm not using Google for search anymore. I'm going directly to ChatGPT because the experience I'm getting from there, it's like 100x more than that. And I think it will actually go into the business world sooner than later, sooner than we think. And customer would expect that level of service. And I think the challenge of the providers, but also the customer success platforms, is how do we make sure that we provide that experience to the customer in a smart way, which will also result in doing much more with less. So that's the combination of technology and efficiency as well.
Yeah, as you said, if everything nirvana is every interaction is digital or delivered via AI, and we don't need the human element.
Yeah, I would very carefully use the word every, because I do think that there needs to be
vast majority.
But the majority of it, let me do my own thing in my own pace, and when I need it, I want to speak with somebody very smart and very intelligent. But most of the things I expect to get right now, it's 3 a.m. in the morning, but that's how I want to actually do it. I don't need to wait for a CSM. I don't need to wait for anything else. Can I get my things done? And if needed, let's bring in the experts, the person. So I do think it's something that will change in the next 12 to 18 months because the user expectation, they have changed on, I think, more in the personal life. They will change in the business life as well.
Gotcha. And just to follow up to that, in terms of the metrics, in terms of the do more with less mantra, which I was smiling, we've all heard that. What are the things when you prioritize your resources are, sort of non-negotiable? We don't, give up. So it's not the less. And what are things that, it's okay to streamline on? Dan, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I mean, tricky question because circumstances will vary, but I think this is an old support trick. You start with the most repetitive tasks. Like make sure no support person ever spends time on the phone helping someone reset their password, right? There's 27 links on the website and frequently asked questions everywhere. So I think that's the approach that I would take, is to start with what looks like low-hanging fruit, things that are repetitive, things that are relatively simple, that don't require, the nuance of understanding your facial reaction to my statements or your body language or even your words, right? So I don't have a great answer to it, but I think that's the way I would think about it.
Yeah, for me, again, I don't think there's one customer success, because it really depends on, again, the type of products and company you're selling to. I think another low-hanging fruit might be in the onboarding phase. Again, not everything should be automatic there, because as Dan says, completely agree that a lot of churn results from poor onboarding. But I do think that you can streamline a lot of the onboarding tasks and a lot of the onboarding process with technology, and specifically with a trusted advisor, which might or might not be AI. Again, that's something that we'll see in the next future. But that's because onboarding is a linear process. Sounds to me that this is something that might be easier to automate than other things in customer success.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
There's one more question here. Sorry, Shreesha, I want to make sure we get to this as well before we run out of time. This is to the domain question. What if there are varying domains you serve and you're not familiar with them all? This is from someone in the audience who's coming from the perspective of serving accounts that are in healthcare, law, education. it gets to the vertical question, which we didn't cover. And Dan, you had raised this point about becoming a domain expert. So how would you advise someone, right, who has these different verticals? Where do you focus first?
Yeah, well, I'd start with saying that domain is not synonymous with industry. I'll use Gainsight as an example. Same with Totango and Strikedeck. Our domain is customer success. Whether we're selling to an engineering company or a healthcare company or a bank, our domain is customer success. So that's what I want my CSMs to have domain expertise in. Same if you're selling an engineering solution. Doesn't matter whether the engineers sit at Intel or Bank of America or United Healthcare, right? My domain is engineering and DevOps or whatever that might be. So don't confuse domain and industry, although there is some overlap there. I do think this is the same challenge we have when a company that, if I'm a CSM at a company that now has, let's say I'm a CSM at Oracle, 873 products. There's no way I can be an expert on all of them. So what do we do? Well, we think that there's a primary product that almost every customer buys. We have the CSM to be a product expert in that. And then we have product experts that the CSM can bring to bear on that account if there's product expertise in other areas that's needed that the CSM doesn't have. I think domain would be the same thing. If the domain, if the industry that we're selling into and supporting is super critical to understanding that business, then we might need a healthcare CSM who can be pulled into those accounts. Because my experience, I have some level of understanding of healthcare, but my domain expertise is not specifically healthcare, so I can bring someone else in. That's kind of a bigger company problem, but it's not uncommon, especially with multiple products.
Makes sense. Shreesha, did you have anything to add? I know you got cut off before on the last question.
Yeah. So, I think you need to have, as a CSM, you need to have expertise in your product for sure. You should know everything about the product. And then I'm assuming here the CSM is handling accounts from different industry, where you don't need to be an industry expert. You need to be aligned with the customer in terms of outcomes that you're delivering. And so whatever is needed to be known to deliver those outcomes, you should know that, or you should strive to learn all about that. And you need not be an industry expert to deliver those outcomes. If you need to be an industry expert to deliver those outcomes, then the product has not been architected well, or there's some flaw in how product is being delivered to customers.
Just one more small thing to add. As Dan said, if you're selling to engineering organization, whether they're in a bank or in a high-tech company, these are engineering, but there are some small flavors. For example, if you're a smart CSM, you know that engineering in a bank probably has to go through much more regulation than somebody in a high-tech company. So there's some small things that could or could not be related to your product regarding to what's the industry that this person is working on. Again, you don't need to know banking. You just need to know that there's another layer into engineering and banking, which is regulation.
Perfect. We're at time. With these three, we could go on a long time talking about this topic. You all have an amazing legacy, a lot to be proud of. We really appreciate you all sharing your insights here today and being a part of SX Live. So thank you, Dan, Omer, Shreesha. It's been a pleasure to be on with you.